Months later, when I thought about that Christmas Eve, I never remembered my mother's face first. I remembered Lucy's suitcase. It was standing upright beside the front door, one wheel caught in the groove between two porch boards, while my 9-year-old niece stood 3 feet away, clutching her little backpack against her chest. My parents' SUV was already backing out of the driveway. Lucy stared through the rear window as if she still believed someone inside would look back, realize what they had done, and stop. Nobody did. I didn't run after them. I didn't pound on the glass or beg my mother to reconsider. I put my hand on Lucy's shoulder, watched the taillights disappear into the damp December evening, and made one phone call that changed everything my family had spent nearly 2 years pretending was true. Before I tell you who I called and why my mother went pale 3 days later, I hope you're doing well wherever you're listening from. Stay with me, because what looked like one cruel Christmas decision turned out to be the loose thread in a much bigger lie. And if you enjoy stories about families finally facing the consequences of their own choices, please subscribe to the channel and keep listening. I had arrived at my parents' house just after 5 that afternoon. I was 38, worked in operations for a regional logistics company, and had spent the first half of Christmas Eve dealing with a delayed shipment that should have been somebody else's problem. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway in suburban Sacramento, the sky had gone the flat gray California gets before a cold winter rain. My mother, Elaine, had every porch light on. Through the front windows, I could see garland around the staircase, wrapped gifts stacked under the tree, and food containers lined up on the kitchen island for the drive to my aunt's house about 45 minutes away. From outside, it looked like the kind of Christmas my mother liked people to see. Inside, nobody was smiling. My father, Martin, stood near the coat closet with his keys in one hand. My mother was beside the dining table. Lucy was across from her, pale and breathing too fast, holding several white envelopes against her chest. Caroline's handwriting was on every one of them. My younger sister Caroline was Lucy's mother. Nearly 2 years earlier, a car accident had killed Caroline's husband, Evan, and left Caroline so badly injured that she could not care for Lucy on her own. At the time, our parents had stepped in. I had supported that decision. I had even signed a statement saying that Mom and Dad were the most stable place for Lucy while Caroline recovered. Back then, I believed I had helped solve a crisis. Standing in that dining room, I realized something had changed long before anyone bothered to tell me. Lucy looked at me the second I came through the door. "Aunt Allison," Grandma said. Mom stopped writing. My mother's jaw tightened. "Lucy, we are not doing this again." Lucy looked down at the envelopes. "But these are from Mom. Give them to me." "No." That one word changed my mother's face. Elaine had spent almost 2 years caring for Lucy. She took her to school, sat with her through nightmares, packed lunches, attended appointments, and handled the routines Caroline physically could not handle at first. Those things were real. That was part of what made what happened next so difficult for me to understand. My mother had not started as some cartoon villain plotting to steal her granddaughter. She had started by helping, but somewhere along the way, helping had become deciding. "Where did you find those?" I asked. Lucy glanced toward a large plastic storage box near the dining room wall, wrapping paper stuck out of the top. "In there." I was looking for the silver ribbon. Mom stepped toward her. "They were put away for a reason." I looked at her. "What reason?" She ignored me. Lucy's eyes filled. "You told me Mom didn't send anything. I told you your mother needed time. You said she stopped trying." "Lucy, you said she was too busy getting better." My father finally spoke. "We need to leave. Everyone is waiting." I stared at him. "Dad, are you hearing this?" He rubbed a hand over his mouth. "Not tonight, Allison." That was my father's favorite phrase when something mattered. Not tonight. Not before dinner. Not during a holiday. Not while your mother is upset. There was always a better time, which usually meant there was never a time at all. Mom took Lucy's coat off the chair and held it out. "Put this on. We are already late." Lucy didn't move. "Can I call Mom?" My mother went still. That silence told me more than anything she had said. "Why can't she call Caroline?" I asked. "She can call her another day." Lucy looked at me. "Why?" My mother snapped. Because every time your mother comes back into this, you fall apart. Every single time. We have had almost 2 years of this. Tonight was supposed to be one peaceful Christmas. Lucy's face crumpled. I just asked about the letters. And now everyone is upset. I stepped between them before I even thought about it. She is 9 years old. Mom looked at me as if I had betrayed her by stating Lucy's age. She knows exactly what she is doing. No, she doesn't. Yes, she does. Caroline keeps stirring her up, and then we are the ones who have to put her back together. Lucy started crying. My mother pointed at her as if the tears proved her argument. Say? Something in me went cold. Not angry. Not yet. Cold. Because I suddenly understood that my mother was not seeing Lucy's distress as something to comfort. She was seeing it as evidence. Lucy wiped her face with her sleeve. I don't want to ruin Christmas. Mom picked up her purse. Then maybe Christmas is better without you. Nobody moved. Even my father looked shocked. Elaine, he said. But he said it softly. Too softly. Lucy stared at my mother. I waited for Mom to take it back. She didn't. Instead, she walked to the front door. My father followed. I said, "Where are you going?" "To your aunt's." "You're leaving Lucy here?" Mom turned. "You seem to think you know better than I do. Stay with her." "Mom, she needs to learn that actions have consequences." Lucy whispered, "I'm sorry." That was the moment I stopped arguing. Not because my mother had won, because I finally understood there was nothing useful left to say to her. I knelt beside Lucy. "Go get your backpack." She looked confused. "My suitcase is already packed." "Just your backpack." She grabbed it from beside the stairs and followed me toward the door, because she thought we were still going somewhere. We weren't. Mom and Dad were already outside. 2 other relatives who had been waiting in the driveway climbed into the second car without asking why Lucy was not coming. Maybe they assumed she was riding with me. Maybe they did not want to get involved. At that point, I didn't care enough to ask. Mom's SUV rolled backward. Lucy ran onto the porch. Her suitcase was still beside the door. "Grandma?" The brake lights glowed red at the end of the driveway. Then the SUV turned onto the street. Lucy stood there crying, both arms wrapped around her backpack. I didn't chase them. I carried the suitcase inside. Then I locked the door. I made Lucy hot chocolate because I needed something ordinary to do with my hands. I found her pajamas in the suitcase, gave her one of my mother's blankets, and put on a Christmas movie she barely watched. I did not ask her what else Grandma had said about Caroline. I did not ask her to explain the letters. She had spent enough of that night carrying adult problems. Once she had stopped shaking, I sent my mother a text. "Lucy is staying with me tonight. Her suitcase was left on the porch. Please send me any routine or emergency information I need, and tell me when you are coming back." Mom answered less than a minute later. "Keep her. She ruined Christmas for everyone." I read it twice. Then I saved it. Not because I knew yet what it would become. Because I worked in operations, and when something went wrong, I documented what happened before people started changing the story. Lucy fell asleep on the couch sometime after 8, with the backpack still pressed against her side. Only then did I pick up my phone. Caroline and I had not had a real conversation in months. We texted on birthdays. We exchanged careful updates. Nothing more. She answered on the 4th ring. "Allison? Lucy is with me." There was a pause. "What do you mean she's with you?" "Mom and Dad left her here." Another pause, longer this time. "Why isn't she with them?" I told her. Not everything. Just enough. The letters. The argument. What Mom said. The car's leaving. When I finished, Caroline was breathing hard. Then she said, "They know she comes home to me on the 27th. I looked toward the dark living room where Lucy slept under my mother's blanket. "What?" "The order was signed 2 weeks ago, Allison. The guardianship ends on the 27th. I pulled the phone away from my ear and opened the calendar. December 24th. 3 days. I put the phone back against my ear. "Caroline," I said slowly. Mom told me the court was still deciding. My sister's answer changed the shape of the entire night. "She lied to you." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucy standing on the porch with that backpack pressed against her chest, waiting for a car that was never going to turn around. By morning, the rain had started, a soft, steady tapping against my parents' windows. The Christmas tree lights were still on. Wrapped presents sat untouched beneath it. The whole house looked ready for a celebration nobody was having. Lucy woke on the couch just after 7 and immediately looked toward the front door, as if she expected Grandma and Grandpa to walk in carrying breakfast and an apology. Instead, she looked at me and asked, "Did I ruin Christmas?" I set down the coffee mug I was holding. "No." She stared at the blanket in her lap. "Grandma said everybody was upset because of me. Everybody was upset because adults made choices they should have handled differently." She looked up. "Because I asked about Mom. Because you asked a question you had every right to ask." I was careful with every word. I did not tell her that Grandma had lied. I did not tell her Caroline was coming to take her home in 2 days. That information belonged to Caroline and the legal process already in motion, and Lucy had spent enough time listening to adults turn every fact into a weapon. I wanted her to have one morning where nobody needed anything from her. She ate half a piece of toast and pushed the rest around her plate. The backpack stayed beside her chair. Every time I moved too close to it, her hand drifted toward the zipper. I noticed, but I did not ask. Around 9, I went upstairs to find a clean shirt for her. When I came back down, Lucy was sitting cross-legged on the living room rug with the backpack in her lap. "Aunt Allison?" "Yeah?" "I found something yesterday." I sat on the floor across from her. She unzipped the backpack slowly and pulled out one white envelope. Then another. Then another. By the time she stopped, 7 envelopes lay between us. All of them were addressed to Lucy. All of them had Caroline's return address. I did not touch them. "Where did you get these?" "In the wrapping box." "The one by the dining room?" She nodded. "I was looking for the silver ribbon Grandma uses." "Did Grandma know you found them?" "I think so. She saw me holding them." That explained more about the argument than I wanted to admit. "Did you open any?" Lucy shook her head. "Why not?" She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "I thought maybe I wasn't supposed to." That sentence landed harder than anything my mother had said the night before. I looked at the envelopes again. The postmarks were visible without opening anything. 1 from June, 1 from July, 2 from August, September, October, November. 7 letters. 7 months. Mom had told me in late October that Caroline had pretty much stopped writing. I remembered the conversation because I had asked whether Lucy was okay. Mom had sighed and said Caroline was focused on herself again. The envelopes on the floor told a different story. Not the whole story, but enough to make me stop trusting the version I had been given. "Can I call your mom and tell her we found these?" I asked. Lucy looked nervous. "Will Grandma get mad?" "That is not something you have to manage." She still hesitated. Then she nodded. Caroline answered quickly this time. When I told her about the letters, she went silent. "How many?" 7. "Dates?" I read the postmarks. I heard her breathe out. "I sent more than that." I looked at Lucy. She was watching my face. "How many more?" "I don't know exactly without checking." "Cards, too." I kept copies of some letters because my lawyer told me to document everything after Mom started saying I wasn't consistent. That sentence made me sit straighter. "Your lawyer told you that?" "Months ago." "Why didn't you tell me?" Caroline laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Would you have believed me?" I did not answer fast enough. She heard the answer anyway. Caroline did not attack me. That almost made it worse. Instead, she said, "I'll send you the contact timeline I already gave my attorney. Dates, visits, calls, letters. You can read it yourself." "I will." "And Allison?" "Yeah?" I did miss calls. I waited. Early on. After surgery. Sometimes I was asleep. Sometimes I was in physical therapy. One time I promised Lucy I'd call and I didn't wake up until the next morning. I canceled a visit on her birthday week because I had a complication and ended up back at the hospital. I closed my eyes. So Mom didn't make all of it up. "No, that mattered," Caroline continued. "She just never updated the story." A few minutes later, the email arrived. The subject line was simple. "Lucy, contact timeline." No accusation. No dramatic paragraph. Just dates. March. Hospitalization. April. Video calls. May. Missed call. June. Visit completed. July. Letter mailed. August. 2 visits completed. September. Counseling session attended. October. Housing inspection completed. November. Increased transition time approved. December. Final transition order entered. I read it twice. Then I opened the attachments. Caroline had not sent me some emotional manifesto about how Mom ruined her life. She had built a record. That bothered me more than anger would have. Because I worked with records for a living, I knew what it looked like when somebody was trying to create a clean timeline instead of win an argument. Lucy had gone upstairs to change by then, so I spread everything across the dining table. On one side, I wrote down things Mom had told me over the past year. Caroline barely calls. Caroline keeps canceling. Lucy gets worse after every visit. The court still doesn't think Caroline is ready. On the other side, I wrote what Caroline could document. Calls, completed visits, letters, counseling, housing, work, court dates. The two columns did not match. Not completely. There were still failures on Caroline's side. Real ones. Enough that I could understand how the old version of the story had started. But they did not explain why Mom was still telling me that version months after the facts changed. I clicked open another attachment. It was not a letter from Caroline. It was a list of exhibits filed earlier in the guardianship case. I scanned the page. Medical records, housing verification, investigator report, school records, declarations. Then I saw my name. Allison Reed. My stomach tightened. I clicked the exhibit. There it was. My signature. My words. I remembered writing them almost 2 years earlier while Caroline was still learning how to stand without help. Elaine and Martin Reed are currently the most stable, temporary placement for Lucy. At the time, I had believed every word. The problem was that someone was still using them now. I sat back in the chair and stared at my own name until the letters blurred. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I understood that this was not only about what my mother had hidden. Part of the story had my fingerprints on it too. I read my declaration 3 times before I could make myself look away. It was dated April 2024, less than 6 weeks after the accident. Caroline was still in rehabilitation then. She could not climb stairs without assistance, could not drive, and could not stand long enough to make Lucy breakfast without risking another fall. In that moment, saying Mom and Dad were the most stable placement had not been cruel. It had been obvious. What bothered me was not that I had written something false. It was that the sentence had outlived the circumstances that made it true. I remembered the week I signed it more clearly than I wanted to. Evan had been dead less than 2 months. Caroline had already had 2 surgeries and was waiting on another. I had spent most evenings driving between the hospital, my parents' house, and my own apartment with a phone charger and a change of clothes in the passenger seat because I never knew where I would end up sleeping. Lucy had started keeping one of her father's sweatshirts under her pillow. Mom was the person packing school lunches. Dad was doing pickup. I was coordinating insurance calls, grocery deliveries, and whatever else nobody else had the energy to organize. When Mom's attorney asked whether I believed they were the safest temporary placement for Lucy, I said yes, because, at that time, they were. The first order had been emergency and temporary. Caroline was still hospitalized, so there had not been some long custody battle before Lucy went to my parents. The court put a short-term guardianship in place so Mom and Dad could handle school, medical decisions, and daily care, while Caroline could barely get out of bed. By May, after notice and a hearing, that temporary arrangement became a general guardianship because Caroline was nowhere near ready to resume full-time parenting. I had attended part of that process. Nobody had stolen Lucy. Caroline had agreed she needed help. That was the piece I had held on to for too long. By late summer 2024, Caroline had moved from a wheelchair to a walker. By the end of that year, she could get around on her own for short periods. Early in 2025, she moved into an accessible apartment, returned to part-time work, and started rebuilding a routine that did not revolve around hospitals. Her visits with Lucy became longer, then more frequent. In May, she petitioned to terminate the guardianship. I knew some of those things. That was difficult to admit, too. Mom had not kept every fact from me. She had told me Caroline was working again. She had mentioned the new apartment. She had even complained that Caroline was pushing too hard for more time with Lucy. I had heard all of it and still never sat down and asked myself whether the conclusion I reached in spring 2024 still applied a year later. Once I thought I had solved something, I tended to leave it solved. That trait had made me good at my job. It had not made me a good sister. I called Caroline after Lucy went upstairs to take a shower. She answered almost immediately. I found the declaration. I figured you would. You saw it in their filing? Yeah. When? Months ago. I rubbed my forehead. Why didn't you ask me about it? There was a pause. Because I thought I already had my answer. I knew what she meant, but I made her say it anyway. You thought I still agreed with them. I thought you had given them something they were still using because you wanted them to keep Lucy. That wasn't what I meant. I know that now. The words landed harder than if she had accused me. I looked down at the declaration again. When I signed this, you were still using a walker. I know. You couldn't drive. I know. You were having surgery every few months. Allison, I know. I stopped. Caroline was not asking me to defend the document. She understood exactly why it existed. The problem was what happened after. I should have checked in, I said. She was quiet. I should have asked what had changed. You should have asked me. That one hurt because it was true. I could have told her Mom had misled me. Eventually, I would tell her that. But Mom had not forced me to stay distant. She had not locked my phone. She had not prevented me from calling my own sister. She had given me a version of events that fit the opinion I already had, and I had accepted it because it was comfortable. I'm sorry, I said. Caroline let out a slow breath. I'm not asking you to fix 2 years tonight. Good, because I can't. That earned the faintest laugh. Then her voice changed. Did you open the order? Not yet. Open it. I went back to the laptop. The document was dated the 10th of December 2025, 2 weeks before Christmas Eve. I read the first page, then the second. The court had granted Caroline's petition to terminate the guardianship. The order became effective December 27. Mom and Dad had a short transitional visitation schedule because they had been Lucy's primary caregivers for nearly 2 years. There was also a review hearing set for February. Everything was already there. Dates, conditions, signatures. No uncertainty. No pending decision. No judge still, considering whether Caroline was ready. I stared at the order until I felt anger rise under my ribs. 2 weeks earlier, I had been standing in Mom's kitchen while she packed cookies into metal tins. I had asked whether the court had made a decision yet. She had sighed. They're still deciding. These things drag on forever. I remembered it exactly because I had said, that must be hard on Lucy. Mom had answered, it is. Every time Caroline pushes, that poor child gets confused all over again. The order had already been signed. I said into the phone, Mom told me the court was still deciding. I know. How? My lawyer sent confirmation that everybody had been served with the signed order. I scrolled farther. There it was. Notice to the guardians. Elaine Reed. Martin Reed. They knew? Yes. Both of them? Yes. I leaned back in the chair. For the first time, the lie stopped looking like a misunderstanding. Mom had not been simplifying a complicated process for me. She had told me the opposite of what had already happened. Why would she do that? Caroline was silent for several seconds. Then she said, I can tell you what I think, but I don't want to tell you what to think. That was another thing I noticed. If this had been the Caroline from a few years earlier, she would have given me a 20-minute speech about Mom's motives. Instead, she let the documents sit between us. I'm listening. She doesn't think I'm ready. That doesn't explain lying to me. No, it doesn't. What does? I think she knew you still trusted her version of everything. I looked at my declaration. That made more sense than I wanted it to. Mom did not need me to file anything new. She needed me to remain the reasonable daughter who nodded when she said Caroline was unstable. My silence was useful. I had mistaken that usefulness for neutrality. What happens on the 27th? I asked. I come to the house at 10. The order says Lucy transitions to me then. Mom and Dad have the visitation schedule after that. You already have a lawyer there? My attorney said she'll come because she expects Mom to make it difficult. I nodded, then realized Caroline could not see me. Okay. Okay, what? I'm not going to interfere with the handoff. I didn't think you would. And I'm not going to pretend I understand everything in your case. Good. But I can tell the truth about what I saw last night. Caroline did not say anything. I can tell the truth about what Mom told me. I can explain what I meant when I signed that declaration. I can say what I knew then and what I know now. You don't have to become part of this. I already am. That was not self-pity. It was fact. My name was in the record. My words were in the record. And my mother had been using my assumption that nothing had changed as part of the atmosphere around Lucy for months. I'm not promising you an outcome, I said. I'm not your attorney. I'm not a social worker. I'm not going to exaggerate anything to make Mom look worse. I wouldn't ask you to. But if somebody asks what happened on Christmas Eve, I'm going to answer accurately. Caroline's voice softened. That's all I wanted from you. After we hung up, I sat alone at the dining table with the order open beside my old declaration. One document showed what had been true in 2024. The other showed what was true now. The problem was not that they contradicted each other. The problem was that my mother had decided only one of them deserved to count. My phone rang. Mom. I watched her name flash across the screen and let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Are you bringing Lucy back before dinner? I looked toward the staircase. No. A beat of silence. Then my mother said, Excuse me? She's staying with me tonight. Allison, don't make this into something bigger than it is. I looked at the December 10 order on the screen. For the first time in almost 2 years, I knew something my mother did not realize I knew. And I understood that the smartest thing I could do was not tell her how much I had learned. My mother did not like silence when she thought she was losing control of a conversation. I knew that about her. But until that Christmas, I had never understood how useful it could be. The old version of me would have filled the space after her question. I would have explained myself, justified staying with Lucy, tried to make her understand why leaving a 9-year-old behind on Christmas Eve was cruel. Instead, I said nothing. Allison? She said. Did you hear me? I heard you. Then bring Lucy back before dinner. What time are you and Dad getting home? She ignored the question. This has gone far enough. What time are you getting home? There was a short pause. Probably around 6. I wrote it down on the pad beside my laptop. Mom heard the pen scratching. What are you doing? Nothing. I'm asking what the plan is. The plan is for Lucy to come home. She is safe here. That isn't the point. I almost asked what the point was. Then I remembered the December 10 order glowing on my laptop screen. So I waited. Mom filled the silence. She had another episode last night, Allison. You saw it. She gets like this every time Caroline starts pushing her. She asked about letters. Because Caroline keeps finding ways to stir her up. The letters were in your house. That is not what I mean. I did not rescue her. She kept going. Lucy has finally had some stability. Do you have any idea what the last year has been like? Every time Caroline wants more contact, Lucy gets anxious. She cries. She can't sleep. She starts asking questions she isn't emotionally ready for. I glanced toward the living room. Lucy was sitting on the rug coloring a page from one of Mom's old Christmas activity books. She looked tired, but not out of control. Every few minutes she checked to make sure I was still there. Mom continued. And now Caroline gets this transition pushed through like everything is suddenly fixed. After what happened last night, anyone reasonable would see the 27th is too soon. There it was. I stopped writing. You think December 27th is too soon? Yes. The answer came immediately. Not confusion. Not, what are you talking about? She knew exactly what date I meant. I let another second pass. Mom, you told me the court was still deciding. Don't start twisting everything I say. I asked you 2 weeks ago, and these things are always being reviewed. That wasn't my question. Her voice sharpened. I am not going to debate court language with you. You weren't here for every nightmare. You weren't at every school meeting. You didn't sit with her when she cried because Caroline canceled. That part was true, and Mom knew it. I had not been there for every difficult night. She had. But being right about the past did not make her right about everything that followed. I'm not debating you, I said. Good. I just wanted to know what time you're returning. She went quiet again. I don't like the way you're talking to me. That was another sentence I knew well. In our family, disagreement could survive. Calm disagreement bothered my mother much more. I'll let Lucy know you'll be back around 6. Do not say anything to her about Saturday. Saturday? The 27th. She had just confirmed it again. What should I tell her? Nothing. She doesn't need more stress. Before I could answer, Mom added, and do not call Caroline into this. She'll use last night to make everything worse. I looked at the 7 envelopes stacked on the table. Okay, I said. Mom hesitated, probably expecting an argument. When none came, she hung up. I stayed at the table for a moment, staring at my phone. I had spent years thinking strength meant winning difficult conversations. That morning, I discovered there were times when strength meant refusing to help somebody escape their own words. I opened a new text to Mom. Just confirming what you said on the phone. You were already aware of the December 27 transition, and you believe what happened on Christmas Eve shows the transition is happening too soon. You said you and Dad expect to be home around 6. I reread it twice before sending. No accusation. No, you lied. No threat. A minute passed. Then her answer appeared. You are twisting my words and creating unnecessary drama. She did not say she had not known about December 27. I saved that message too. I was careful not to turn her refusal to deny something into proof of more than it was. I did not need to. I already had the signed order. What the text gave me was something smaller and cleaner, evidence of what she was willing to say to me after the order existed. My phone rang again 20 minutes later. This time it was Caroline. I'm coming over. No, I'm not asking permission. Then I'm telling you it's a bad idea. Mom left my daughter behind on Christmas and lied to her about my letters. I know. And you want me to sit at home? I want you to think about what happens if you show up here angry. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I didn't say you would. Then what are you saying? I walked into the hallway so Lucy could not hear me. I'm saying Mom already thinks last night proves Lucy is unstable because of you. If you come here before the scheduled handoff, furious, and there's another scene, you hand her exactly what she wants. Caroline went silent. I continued. The order already exists. You don't need to win a confrontation today. My daughter is there. She is safe. I know she's safe with you. Then let tonight be about her. Caroline exhaled hard. I hate that you're right. I'm getting used to people saying that. She gave a humorless laugh. Then she said quieter, I just want to see her. I know. I've wanted to see her every day for almost 2 years. That shut down the smart answer forming in my head. I know, I said. She waited. Tomorrow, I added, we do this according to the plan already in place. Tonight, let her breathe. Caroline agreed. Not happily. That mattered too. She was angry, but she could still choose not to make Lucy carry the anger. By early afternoon, Lucy had asked about Grandma 4 times. The 5th time, she said, Can I call her? I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to say no. Mom had just told me not to involve Caroline while freely defining Lucy's emotions however she pleased. Letting her talk to Lucy felt like opening the door again. But Lucy loved her. That was the part revenge stories often make too simple. The person hurting you can also be somebody you miss. Yes, I said, you can call her. I sat at the other end of the couch while Lucy used my phone. Mom answered on the first ring. Babe? Lucy's face softened immediately. Hi, Grandma. Oh, sweetheart, are you okay? I think so. We were so worried about you. I looked away. Lucy picked at the edge of the blanket. I'm sorry. For what? For asking about Mom. And the letters. Mom sighed loudly enough for me to hear. Grandma loves you even when you make bad choices. I looked back at Lucy. Her shoulders curled inward. I didn't mean to make everybody mad. I know. You just have to understand that some things are too complicated for children. I just wanted to know why Mom wrote me. And this is what I mean. You get yourself upset. Lucy's eyes filled. I'm not upset. You're crying. The words hit me with a strange sense of repetition. Mom had done the same thing the night before. Lucy reacted to pressure. Mom pointed to the reaction as proof that the pressure was necessary. Lucy, I said gently, holding out my hand for the phone. We're going to get lunch. She gave it to me. Mom said, Allison, don't you dare. I'll talk to you later. I ended the call. Lucy wiped her face. Is Grandma mad? That is Grandma's feeling. Should I call back? No. What if she thinks I don't love her? I sat beside her. You don't have to prove you love someone by making yourself feel bad. She looked at me as if I had told her something completely new. That frightened me more than the crying. Later, after Lucy went upstairs to find a puzzle, Caroline sent me another file through the secure link her attorney had already used for materials she was allowed to share. It was not therapy notes or somebody's private medical record. It was part of the filed investigator material from the guardianship case. I expected legal language. What caught my attention were the repeated descriptions of Lucy after contact with Caroline. Anxious, difficulty sleeping, emotionally dysregulated, confused about placement. At first, I thought the reports came from several independent people. Then I looked at the source references. In one section, the information had been reported by the guardians. In another, Elaine Reed. Another summarized concerns provided by the maternal grandmother. I scrolled back, then forward. Same pattern. The evaluator had made observations of her own, but much of the ongoing narrative about what happened in the hours and days after Caroline's calls and visits came from Mom. That did not automatically make the reports false. It did change the question. I called Caroline. Who was the main person telling them Lucy was falling apart after contact with you? She did not answer immediately. Then she said, Mom. I stared at the screen. For almost 2 years, I had believed my mother was the person reporting the problem. I had never considered the possibility that she was also helping create it. By the time I finished comparing the dates, I had 3 legal pads spread across my parents' dining table and enough coffee in me to make my hands shake. I did not want a theory. I wanted a sequence I could defend if somebody challenged every line of it. That meant keeping the facts that helped my mother too, not just the ones that made me angry. Caroline had missed a scheduled call in May 2024 because she had been heavily medicated after surgery. She had canceled a visit that summer after a complication sent her back to the hospital. In September, Lucy had cried for nearly an hour after Caroline left at the end of a visit. Mom had not invented those things. They were in the timeline, and Caroline had never tried to hide them. I circled them instead of crossing them out. Then I added the other dates. A letter mailed in June, another in July, 2 in August, a request for a longer visit in September, a denied schedule change in October, a report from Mom that Lucy had become increasingly unsettled that same week, another letter in November, another report that Lucy was asking too many questions about going home. I kept going until the pattern stopped looking accidental. It was not proof that every time Lucy cried, Mom had caused it. That would have been too easy, and it would not have been true. Lucy had lost her father. Her mother had nearly died. She had spent almost 2 years moving between grief, uncertainty, and adults discussing her future. Of course, she was anxious sometimes, but the dates showed something else too. Caroline would reach out. Some contact would happen. Some would be delayed. Some letters would never reach Lucy at all. Then Lucy would become confused about why her mother seemed present one week and absent the next. Mom would report the confusion as evidence that Caroline's involvement was destabilizing her. Then the argument for limiting or slowing contact became stronger. I stared at the page. The loop was simple enough to fit into 4 lines. Caroline reached out. Mom controlled what Lucy received. Lucy became confused. Mom used the confusion to justify more control. I leaned back in my chair. For months, I had assumed Mom was standing outside the problem, describing it. Now I was beginning to think she had been standing inside it. My phone rang before I could call Caroline. Dad? I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I answered. Allison. His voice was low. Where's Lucy? Upstairs. Can she hear you? No. He exhaled. Your mother went too far. I waited. That was the first time he had said it plainly. Not, she was upset. Not, Christmas got out of hand. Not, everyone said things. She went too far. I said yes. Dad seemed to expect more. When I did not give it to him, he continued. She's been under a lot of pressure. I almost laughed. There it was, the soft landing he always built around Mom's choices. She's losing a child she's raised for almost 2 years. Lucy is not her child. You know what I mean. I do. That's the problem. Allison, don't turn this into a war. I'm not. It feels like you are. I stayed home with a 9-year-old after you drove away. We knew you were there. That does not make what happened normal. He lowered his voice further. I said she went too far. You said it to me. What's that supposed to mean? It means you keep disagreeing with Mom in private and doing what she wants in public. There was a pause. Then Dad said, "Don't blow up the whole family over one bad night." I looked at the envelopes stacked beside my notebook. It isn't one night. Allison, did you know about the letters? Silence. I sat completely still. Dad? I knew there was mail. That wasn't my question. He sighed. Your mother handled most of that. Did you know Caroline was sending letters to Lucy that Lucy wasn't getting? Another pause. Yes. The word was quiet. I closed my eyes. How many? I don't know. Did you ever ask? Of course I asked. What did Mom say? That Lucy was having a hard time. That bringing Caroline back into every calm period would start everything over again. The sentence sounded so familiar that I wondered how many times Mom had said it. Did you agree? Sometimes. That isn't what I asked. Dad's voice tightened. You make everything sound black and white when it isn't. I'm asking whether you knew Mom was keeping letters from Lucy. I told you I knew there was mail, and you left it there. I thought your mother would give it to her when the timing was better. For 7 months? I didn't know it was 7. I looked at the postmarks. One of the envelopes had a small blue stain near the corner, probably from a pen or a wet countertop. I suddenly imagined Caroline writing Lucy's name on it, sealing it, sending it, and assuming it reached her. Did you ever try to give Lucy one yourself? Dad did not answer. That was answer enough. Dad. One time. I gripped the pen in my hand. What happened? I saw one on your mother's desk. I put it in my pocket. And? She noticed. What did she say? That Lucy had finally slept through the night for almost a week. That if I handed her something from Caroline, we'd be right back where we started. So you gave it back. I put it back on the desk. I stared at the wall. For a moment, I was not angry. I was tired. Because Dad had spent years describing himself as the person who kept Mom from going too far. What he actually did was walk right up to the line, look at it, and step backward. You knew enough to be uncomfortable, I said. That is not the same as knowing she was doing something wrong. You took the letter because you thought Lucy should have it. I thought maybe she should. And then Mom got upset. She made a point I thought was reasonable. Was it? He did not answer. I said, Lucy asked me this morning if Grandma would stop loving her because she wanted to talk to her mom. Dad inhaled sharply. She said that? Yes. That's not what your mother wants. I didn't say it was what she wants. I said it is what Lucy learned. He went quiet. I softened my voice, but not the point. Intent is not the same thing as outcome. Your mother loves that little girl. I know. And Caroline has hurt her. I know that too. Then why are you acting like Elaine is some monster? I'm not. The answer came easily, because it was true. I'm acting like love doesn't make every decision safe. Dad said nothing. I looked back at my notes. Caroline missed calls. I wrote them down. She canceled a visit. I wrote that down too. Lucy really cried after one visit. I'm not erasing any of that. Then you understand. I understand there were reasons to be careful. I do not understand hiding letters and then pointing to Lucy's confusion as proof that more things should be hidden. That landed. I could tell because Dad stopped defending Mom and started defending himself. I was trying to keep peace in that house. There it is. What? The sentence you always use. I have lived with your mother for 40 years. You don't know what it's like when she gets convinced something is dangerous. I almost said, then leave. But that was not the issue. Dad, you were not neutral. I never said I was. You act like you were. He sounded genuinely offended. I kept things from getting worse. For who? He did not answer. I did. For Mom. That's not fair. It was easier to let Lucy stay confused than let Mom be angry with you. His breathing changed. I knew I had hit the part he did not want named. That is not what happened. You found a letter you thought Lucy should have. Mom told you not to give it to her. You put it back. You weren't there. No, you just told me. Silence again. I hated how familiar the rhythm had become. Someone in my family would tell me exactly what happened, then get angry when I repeated it without the excuses attached. Dad finally said, What are you going to do? I'm going to tell the truth about what I know. To Caroline's lawyer? If they ask for a declaration for the review, yes. Your mother will see that as betrayal. That doesn't change whether it's true. He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, "There are things I can tell them too." I sat up. "What things?" "Things I saw. Things I should have said before." "Then say them." "It's not that simple. It is if they're facts." "No, Allison, it isn't." I heard something in his voice I had not expected. Fear. Not of court. Not of Caroline. Of Mom. "I can tell the court what I saw," he said. "I just don't know if I can do that to your mother." I looked at the 7 envelopes on the table. For the first time, I understood that Dad had been asking the wrong question for years. The question was never whether he could do something to Mom. It was how much he was willing to let happen to everyone else so he would not have to. Dad's last sentence stayed with me after we hung up, but I stopped waiting for it to turn into action. That was the mistake everyone in our family made with him. We treated his discomfort like a promise. We heard him say something was wrong and assumed that eventually he would do something about it. By then, I understood the difference. Feeling guilty was not the same as taking responsibility, and Lucy did not have time for another adult to work up the courage to tell the truth. I opened a new document on my laptop and started writing down only what I could personally support. I did not write that Mom had manipulated the court. I did not write that she had tried to steal Lucy from Caroline. I did not write that Dad had knowingly helped her lie. Those were conclusions, and I was done confusing conclusions with facts. Instead, I wrote the date of my original declaration. I explained the circumstances under which I signed it. I listed what I had been told about Caroline's recovery, what I later learned from the signed order, what I witnessed on Christmas Eve, and the exact words Mom had used when she told me the court was still deciding. I added the text she sent after leaving Lucy behind. I noted that I had personally seen 7 unopened letters addressed to Lucy with postmarks spanning several months. The document was not dramatic. That was why I trusted it. Caroline called while I was still working. "Lucy wants to know if she has to go with me tomorrow." I pushed my chair back. "What did you tell her?" "That the judge already made the decision and that she's coming home with me." "Good." She asked what happens if Grandma cries. I closed my eyes. Of all the things Lucy could have been afraid of, that was the one she chose. Not a new bedroom. Not changing routines. Not living with her mother again. Grandma crying. "What did you say?" I told her Grandma's feelings are Grandma's responsibility. I smiled despite everything. Also good. She didn't look convinced. "She's 9. She's had almost 2 years of practice doing the opposite." Caroline was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What if she says she wants to stay?" The question came out so softly that I almost missed it. "You mean tomorrow?" "Yes." I leaned back against the chair. Caroline had spent months building toward December 27th. She had followed the process, gone to therapy, completed evaluations, tolerated supervised visits, documented missed calls she probably wanted to pretend never happened, and waited while other people decided when she was stable enough to be her own daughter's mother again. And now she was afraid Lucy might look at her and choose Mom. "If she says she misses Grandma, let her miss Grandma," I said. "That isn't what I asked." "I know. What if she says she wants to stay there?" "Then you don't make her responsible for the decision." Caroline exhaled. "The order is the order. You take her home, you let her be angry, you let her cry, you let her call Grandma according to the schedule. But you don't ask a 9-year-old to settle a guardianship case with her feelings." Caroline did not answer immediately. Then she said, "I used to think getting her back would be the hard part. It still is." "No, I think the hard part is not making her prove she wants me." That was the most important thing she had said since Christmas Eve. Mom wanted Lucy to prove love through loyalty. If Caroline did the same thing from the other side, Lucy would only be changing prisons. "You're right," I said. "I hate that." "I know." After we hung up, I returned to the declaration. I added one sentence I had avoided the first time. My earlier statement reflected Caroline's medical condition in spring 2024 and should not be read as an opinion that Elaine and Martin Reed should remain Lucy's guardians after Caroline regained the ability to care for her. I read it twice. That was the correction I owed. Not because my first statement had been false. Because context mattered. Around 4 that afternoon, Mom texted me. "We're leaving your aunt's now. Have Lucy ready." I looked at the message for several seconds before answering. "Lucy is staying with me tonight. Tomorrow's transition will happen as ordered. The typing bubble appeared immediately, then disappeared, then came back. What have you been doing? I did not answer. Another message appeared. Did Caroline send you the court papers? Again, I did not answer. Then, Allison, you have no idea what you're getting involved in. I almost replied that she was right about one thing. 2 days earlier, I had not. Instead, I put the phone down. Lucy came into the dining room wearing pajamas, even though it was not yet 5. Are Grandma and Grandpa coming back? Yes. Am I going with them? No, you're staying with me tonight. She looked toward the window. What about tomorrow? I pulled out the chair beside me. Tomorrow your mom is coming. Lucy froze. To visit? No, tomorrow is the day you're going to live with her again. Her mouth opened slightly. Nobody had told her clearly. That realization made me angry all over again, but I kept it out of my voice. Forever? The court decided your mom can take care of you again. Grandma and Grandpa will still see you. There's a schedule. Lucy stared at the floor. You knew? I found out last night. Did Grandma know? There were times when protecting a child meant softening information. This was not one of them. Yes. Lucy sat very still. Why didn't she tell me? I don't know exactly. That was true. I could infer plenty. I was not going to hand those inferences to a 9-year-old as fact. She said Mom was still trying to get me back. I know. So Mom already did? Yes. Lucy pulled her sleeves over her hands. Is Grandma going to be mad at me? No matter what Grandma feels, this is not something you caused. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the floor. When my parents' SUV finally pulled into the driveway, the rain had stopped. Dad came in first, carrying 2 foil-covered dishes. Mom followed without anything in her hands. She looked at me, then at Lucy, then at my laptop. What did you tell her? The truth about tomorrow. Mom's face changed. You had no right. I stood. I had enough right to answer a direct question honestly. You don't understand what this is going to do to her. Lucy flinched. I saw it. Mom did not. That conversation ends now, I said. Mom stared at me. I did not raise my voice. That seemed to bother her more. You're taking Caroline's side. I'm taking responsibility for what I say. Same thing. No. Dad set the dishes down. Elaine, let's not do this tonight. Mom rounded on him. Of course. Now you want to be reasonable. He looked at me instead of her. That told me everything I needed to know about how the drive home had gone. I waited until Lucy went upstairs before I spoke again. Dad, if you decide to give a statement about what you personally saw, do it through the proper process. Mom turned. What statement? Dad's face drained. Allison. I looked directly at him. I'm not going to speak for you. Mom stared from him to me. What is she talking about? Dad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That was when I stopped expecting him to save anyone. I'm going home after tomorrow, I said. I'll send my declaration through Caroline's attorney for the February review. What Dad does is his decision. Mom looked at me as if I had become a stranger. You wrote a declaration? I'm correcting the context of the one I signed before. You are trying to destroy us. No. I closed the laptop. I'm making sure my name doesn't keep saying something I no longer believe. Mom stepped closer. You think a few letters make Caroline ready to be a mother again? No. The court already decided she was ready. The letters tell me something different. What? That you knew she was trying. For once, Mom had no answer. Dad did. Maybe everybody should sleep. I looked at him. That was still his solution. Delay. Silence. Tomorrow. I gathered my laptop and the copies of the letters, then went upstairs to check on Lucy. Behind me, Mom and Dad started arguing in low voices. I did not stay to hear it. For years, I had confused being the calmest person in the room with being the person responsible for keeping everyone calm. That night, I finally let my parents have the consequences of their own conversation. The next morning, at exactly 10, the doorbell rang. I was halfway down the stairs when Mom reached the door first. She opened it. Then she went completely pale. Mom did not look surprised to see Caroline. She looked surprised to see that Caroline had not come alone. My sister stood on the porch in a dark coat with one hand wrapped around the strap of her bag. Beside her was the attorney who had been handling the guardianship case. There were no police cars, no deputies, No dramatic stack of papers being waved in anyone's face. There did not need to be. The order had already been signed. It was 10 o'clock on December 27th, exactly when everyone had been told the transition would happen. Mom recovered quickly. She always did when somebody outside the family was watching. Her shoulders straightened, her voice softened, and the woman who had told a 9-year-old Christmas would be better without her disappeared behind the expression of a concerned grandmother. "Caroline," she said, "I wish you had called before bringing someone here." Caroline glanced at her attorney. "You knew the handoff was at 10. I knew what the order said. That doesn't mean we can ignore what happened Christmas Eve." Dad stood behind Mom without speaking. I stayed near the bottom of the stairs. Mom continued. "Lucy had a severe emotional episode. She cried for hours. She was confused. She was terrified. Anyone who saw her would understand that forcing this transition right now is not in her best interest." I almost interrupted. Then I stopped myself. That was the old instinct again. Correct the sentence, win the point, make everyone understand. The order did not depend on whether I won an argument in the foyer. Caroline did not raise her voice either. My daughter asked why letters from me were hidden in this house. Mom's face tightened. She found things she was not supposed to find. Caroline looked at her. "Letters addressed to her. This is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into a confrontation." The attorney spoke then, calmly. "We're not here to relitigate the guardianship at the front door. The termination order is effective today. The transition is scheduled for 10. Mom looked at Dad. He looked at the floor. For almost 2 years, Mom had been able to turn every disagreement into another conversation, another delay, another reason everybody should wait until she felt comfortable. There was no delay left that morning. Lucy appeared at the top of the stairs. She had dressed herself. Jeans. Sneakers. A pale sweater Caroline had bought her months earlier. The backpack hung from one shoulder. Her suitcase was beside me. She looked down at Caroline. Then at Mom. Nobody moved. Caroline's face changed when she saw her, but she did not rush forward. That mattered. She waited. Lucy came down one step. Then another. Halfway down, she stopped. "Am I supposed to go now?" Caroline crouched so they were closer to eye level. "Yes." Lucy looked at Mom. Mom's mouth trembled. I watched Lucy notice it. Her hand tightened around the backpack strap. Caroline saw it too. "You're allowed to miss Grandma," she said. Lucy looked back at her. "You are allowed to love Grandma and Grandpa. You don't have to prove anything to me today." The tension in Lucy's face shifted, but it did not disappear. Mom folded her arms. "This is exactly what concerns me. She's clearly conflicted." Caroline stood. "Of course she's conflicted. She needs stability. She needs adults who stop making her responsible for their feelings." Mom took a step forward. "I have been the stable person in her life for almost 2 years. Then she turned toward me. "And Allison knows that." I felt my stomach tighten. Mom looked directly at Lucy. "Your aunt said it herself." I knew what was coming before she finished. Even Allison told the court this was the stable home. Lucy's eyes moved to me. Mom had found the one weapon I could not call a lie. "Is that true?" Lucy asked. I walked toward her slowly. "Yes." Her face fell. "When?" "When your mom was badly hurt." "Did you say I should stay here?" "I said Grandma and Grandpa were the safest place for you while your mom couldn't take care of you." "Mom kutin." She said this was the stable home. I turned toward her. That was in spring 2024. Because it was true. "Yes." Mom looked almost triumphant. I finished. "It was true then." She stopped. Lucy was still watching me. I could have tried to explain everything. The hospital, the surgeries, the temporary order, the way circumstances had changed. I could have defended myself until she understood exactly why I had written what I wrote. But she was 9 years old, standing in a hallway, while 4 adults discussed where she belonged. That was enough. "I did say it," I told her. "Your mom was hurt, and I thought you needed to be here then." Lucy swallowed. "Do you think I should stay now?" "No." The word came out clean. Mom stared at me. Lucy did not smile. She did not run into my arms. She simply nodded. Caroline picked up Lucy's suitcase. Dad stepped forward. "I'll carry that." Caroline let him. It was probably the first useful thing he had done that morning. At the door, Lucy turned back toward Mom. For a second, I thought she might run to her. Mom opened her arms. Lucy walked over slowly and hugged her. Mom held on too tightly. You know Grandma loves you. I know. This will always be your home. Lucy did not answer. Caroline looked away. I respected her for that. She could have corrected Mom. She could have said, no, her home is with me now. She didn't. When Lucy pulled away, Mom whispered something I could not hear. I did not pretend later that I knew what it was. That morning had already taught me enough about the danger of filling in blanks with whatever explanation suited me. Lucy hugged Dad next. Then she came to me. Her arms barely closed around my waist. I put one hand on her back. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Did you tell them Mom couldn't take care of me? I looked at Caroline. She did not intervene. Yes, I said. When she was hurt, I did. Lucy stepped away. I saw something close in her expression. Not hatred. Not even anger. Just uncertainty. For someone who had spent almost 2 years being told which adults were safe, one more complicated truth was more than she wanted. Caroline opened the door. Lucy walked out with her. Nobody stopped them. No one needed to. The order did what it had been signed to do. Mom stood in the foyer after the door closed. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then she turned toward me. You did this to her. I looked at the empty place where Lucy's suitcase had been. No. You filled Caroline's head with all of this right before the transition. The transition was ordered before Christmas. You made Lucy think she was being lied to. The letters did that. You always think documents tell the whole story. That one hurt because there was enough truth in it. I picked up my laptop bag. No, I said. I think documents tell part of it. I think what people do tells the rest. Mom's face hardened. After everything I've done for that child. That's the problem, Mom. You keep treating everything good you did as permission for everything that came after. Dad closed his eyes. Mom stared at me. I left before the argument could become another loop. That evening, Caroline called. For half a second, I thought it might be Lucy. It wasn't. How is she? I asked. Quiet. Did she eat? A little. I waited. Caroline exhaled. She asked if she could sleep with the hallway light on. That sounds normal. Yeah. Another pause. Then Caroline said, She doesn't want to talk to you tonight. I sat very still. Okay. She's confused about the declaration. I know. I told her you signed it when I was in the hospital. Don't push her. I wasn't going to. If she's angry at me, let her be angry. Caroline was quiet. You sure? No. That made her laugh softly. But I meant it. For once, fixing the truth did not mean I got to control how quickly someone forgave me for being wrong. I did not call Lucy again the next morning. That was harder than I expected. Every instinct I had told me to explain myself, to make sure she understood that the declaration had been written when Caroline could barely walk and not because I wanted her separated from her mother forever. But I had already spent too much of my life believing that if I could just explain something clearly enough, everyone would arrive at the same conclusion I had. Lucy did not owe me that kind of immediate understanding, so I sent Caroline one message instead. Tell her I'm here when she wants me. Nothing more. Caroline called later that afternoon. She thinks you wanted Mom and Dad to keep her. I closed my eyes. That isn't what I meant. The words were out before I could stop them. Caroline did not answer. I heard myself. And I knew exactly what I had done. That isn't the point, I said. No. I meant what I wrote then. You were still in rehab. I know. But Lucy doesn't care about what I intended in a court declaration she doesn't understand. No. I rubbed my forehead. She only knows I said Grandma and Grandpa were the stable home. That's what Mom wanted her to hear. I almost agreed too quickly, then stopped myself again. Mom had weaponized the sentence, yes. But she had not created it. I still signed it, I said. Caroline was quiet for a moment. That's why I'm doing the updated declaration. Her voice changed slightly. My attorney said the February review is the right place for it. Good. The December order had already terminated the guardianship. Nothing I wrote now was going to reverse Christmas or replay the handoff. The February hearing was about the transitional visitation schedule Mom and Dad had been given after Lucy returned to Caroline. If my old declaration was still being pointed to as proof that I believed they should remain the stabilizing adults in Lucy's life, then I needed the record to show what I actually believed now and why. I spent most of that evening revising the statement. I kept taking adjectives out. Manipulative, deceptive, controlling. Every time one appeared, I deleted it and replaced it with something I could actually prove. On December 24, I personally observed Lucy holding multiple unopened envelopes addressed to her from Caroline. Elaine Reed told me the court was still deciding whether Caroline was ready, despite the termination order having been signed on December 10. Elaine Reed acknowledged awareness of the December 27 transition during our phone call on December 26. I attached the text she sent after leaving Lucy with me. I explained the context of my original declaration in plain language. In spring 2024, I believed Elaine and Martin were the safest placement because Caroline was medically incapable of caring for Lucy full-time. That statement was accurate at the time. It was not intended as a permanent opinion about Caroline's ability to parent after recovery. The hardest paragraph was the last one. I wrote that I had relied too heavily on information provided by my parents and had failed to independently reassess the situation as Caroline's circumstances changed. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I left it in. The next morning, Caroline's attorney reviewed the draft with me by phone. She asked me to remove one sentence because it crossed from observation into speculation about Mom's motive. I did. That mattered to me. I did not want revenge badly enough to become sloppy. When the final version was ready, I signed it and sent it back through the proper channel. Mom called less than 2 hours later. I had expected anger. What I got was injury. How could you do this to us? I was standing in my kitchen, staring at a bowl of apples I had bought before Christmas and never touched. I told the truth about what I know. You made me sound like some kind of liar. I described specific things you told me. You know how complicated this has been. I do. You know what we gave up for Lucy. I do. And this is how you repay us? I gripped the edge of the counter. That sentence explained more about Mom than she realized. She thought care created debt. She thought sacrifice earned authority. And somewhere along the way, she had started treating Lucy's love as repayment. I'm not repaying anyone, I said. This isn't a transaction. You are siding with Caroline. I'm correcting what my old statement is being used to imply. That statement was true. Yes. She stopped. I continued. It was true then. Her breathing changed. You always do this. Do what? Reduce people to documents and dates. No, I'm trying very hard not to reduce anyone to anything. You don't understand what raising that child cost us. I understand that you helped her. Helped her? Her voice cracked. We raised her. For a period when Caroline could not. She needed us. She did. And now suddenly none of that matters? That is not what I said. It's what you're doing. I did not argue after that, because I finally understood the trap. If I spent an hour proving that Mom's years with Lucy mattered, she would hear the part she wanted. Therefore, I had the right to keep control. So I said, I'm not changing what happened. I'm changing what I'm willing to let my old words imply. Mom hung up on me. 2 days later, Dad asked if he could come over. He looked older when I opened the door. Not dramatically, just tired. He sat at my kitchen table and kept both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he barely touched. Your mother knows I talked to you. I assumed. She thinks I'm helping Caroline. Are you? He looked at me. I don't know. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Dad, you either tell the truth about what you personally saw or you don't. I know. No, I don't think you do. He flinched. I softened my voice. You keep talking like the truth only counts if it helps one side. She's my wife. And Lucy is your granddaughter. He looked down. I did know about some of the letters. I know. I did put one back. I know that too. I should have given it to her. Yes. He nodded once. That was the first time he had said it without adding an excuse. A few days later, Caroline told me Dad had agreed to provide a short declaration through her attorney. He kept it narrow. He did not diagnose Mom. He did not accuse her of plotting. He wrote about what he saw. He had known some letters were being withheld. He had intended to give one to Lucy. He had put it back after Mom objected. He had repeatedly chosen not to challenge her because he wanted to avoid conflict. It was not a heroic statement. That was why I believed it. Nothing happened the next morning. No judge called. No one lost visitation overnight. The February review was still weeks away. Life kept moving in the irritatingly normal way life does, when you are waiting for something important. Then, one evening, Mom texted me, "Your father is destroying this family?" I read it twice. Not I made mistakes. Not I hurt Lucy. Not even Caroline is destroying this family. Dad, because he had finally described what he saw. I did not answer. The transitional visits continued while everyone waited for the February review. And that meant Mom still had one last chance to show that she could be Lucy's grandmother without trying to be the person who decided what Lucy was allowed to feel. By the middle of January, Lucy had been living with Caroline for a few weeks, and nothing about the transition looked like the clean ending people like to imagine when they hear that a child has gone home. Some days were easy. Other days, Lucy cried because she missed Grandma's pancakes, or because Caroline folded her clothes differently, or because she remembered a birthday Caroline had missed while she was recovering. Caroline let her be angry. That mattered to me. She never answered with a list of everything Mom had done wrong. She never said, "After everything I fought through to get you back." She let Lucy miss the people who had hurt her because she understood that love does not disappear just because trust changes. The transitional visits with Mom and Dad continued under the schedule the court had already set. They were supposed to give Lucy a way to keep important relationships while everyone adjusted. For the first 2 visits, Caroline said Mom behaved almost perfectly. She cooked Lucy's favorite pasta, asked about school, sent her home with a book instead of a bag full of guilt. Dad stayed close, probably because he understood by then that people were paying attention to patterns, not just isolated moments. I wanted to believe Mom had finally understood what she stood to lose. Then came the 3rd visit. I was not sitting in the room when the conversation started, and I never pretended later that I was. What I knew came from what Lucy told Caroline afterward, what Dad admitted he heard, and what was documented for the February review. By then, I had learned to separate those things carefully. The visit began normally. Mom had made chicken noodle soup because Lucy had mentioned having a cold at school. She gave her a small craft kit and helped her glue tiny wooden pieces into a crooked little birdhouse. Dad apparently spent most of the first hour watching football with the sound low while Lucy painted the roof blue. Then Mom started asking questions, not openly hostile ones. That was never her strongest method. She asked whether Lucy liked Caroline's apartment. Lucy said yes. Mom asked if she missed having a yard. Lucy said sometimes. Mom asked whether she missed sleeping in her old room. Lucy said yes again. Each question sounded harmless by itself. Then Mom asked, "Do you ever wish you could just come home?" Lucy told Caroline later that she did not understand what Mom meant. "This is home too," she had said. Mom corrected her. "No, sweetheart, I mean here." Lucy apparently went quiet. Dad told me later that was the moment he knew where the conversation was going. He still did not stop it fast enough. Mom continued, "You know you can tell people what you want." Lucy said, "I wanted to live with Mom. I know what you said then. But now you know what it's really like." What's what like? Living there. That was how Mom worked. She rarely placed the pressure down all at once. She built a staircase and waited for somebody else to climb it. Lucy said she liked living with Caroline. Mom told her she did not have to protect her mother's feelings. There was something almost impressive about the reversal. Mom had spent nearly 2 years training Lucy to protect hers. Then she used the language of emotional freedom to push the child toward the answer she wanted. Lucy asked, "Are you saying I should come back?" Mom said, "I'm saying if you tell them you want to, they have to listen." That was not legally accurate in the simple way Mom made it sound, but Lucy was 9. She did not hear a technical statement about court discretion. She heard that maybe the adults had made the wrong choice, and she was supposed to fix it. Dad finally interrupted. "Elaine, leave it alone." Mom told him she was only talking to her granddaughter. Then she said something that pulled me directly back into the story. "Your mother only got you back because Aunt Allison changed her story." Lucy knew what she meant. My declaration. The thing I had spent weeks trying not to make about me had been dragged back into the room because Mom still needed a villain for anything she could no longer control. Lucy asked, "Aunt Allison lied before?" "No," Mom said. "She decided to say something different when your mother needed it. Dad told me he corrected her. He said, 'That's not what happened.'" Mom ignored him. Lucy went quiet again. Then she asked the question Mom had been avoiding since Christmas. "Did Mom stop writing to me?" Dad said the room changed immediately. Mom answered, "We have talked about this." Lucy did not let it go. "Did she stop writing?" "No." Then why didn't I get the letters? Mom said. Because you were finally doing well. Lucy asked. So you kept them? Mom answered with the sentence that finally stripped the whole argument down to what it had always been. I did what I had to do to keep you safe. When Caroline told me that later, I remembered sitting in my parents' dining room with 7 envelopes spread in front of me. All those months I had wondered whether Mom understood what she had done. That sentence answered me. She understood the action. She just believed her reason, gave her permission. Lucy started crying. Not loudly. Caroline said she had learned the difference between Lucy being overwhelmed and Lucy trying not to upset someone. This was the second kind. She asked. So Mom didn't forget me? Mom said, that is not what this is about. For Lucy, it was exactly what it was about. Dad stepped in then and ended the conversation. He told Mom that the visit was over if she could not stop discussing the case. Mom accused him of taking Caroline's side. Lucy heard that too. Another loyalty test. Another adult turning disagreement into sides. The visit ended early. When Caroline picked Lucy up, Mom tried to hug her goodbye. Lucy did not move toward her. Mom opened her arms anyway. Come here, sweetheart. Lucy stood beside Caroline. Mom looked wounded. You're not gonna hug Grandma now? There it was again. Love presented as an obligation. Lucy looked at her for several seconds. Then she asked, Are you going to make me choose again? Mom's expression changed. I never made you choose. Lucy looked down. It felt like it. Nobody had taught her that sentence. No lawyer. No evaluator. No adult had scripted it. That was what made it hurt. She was describing the experience in the only language she needed. Caroline did not tell her to hug Mom. Dad did not pressure her either. For once, the adults around Lucy allowed silence to belong to her. Mom turned toward Caroline. Then toward me later that evening when she called. You turned her against me. I had heard versions of that accusation before, but by then it did not pull me into the argument. No, I said. She asked you a question, and you filled her head with all of this. I wasn't even there. Caroline was. Lucy already knew about the letters. She is a child. She does not understand what was happening. Then you should have explained it without asking her to choose you. I did not ask her to choose me. I thought about correcting every sentence. Instead, I asked one question. Why did you tell her that if she said she wanted to come back, people had to listen? Mom went quiet. Then she said, Because her feelings matter. They do. So now I'm wrong for telling her that? No, you're wrong for only treating her feelings as valid when they move in your direction. Mom inhaled sharply. I continued before she could redirect. She missed you. Caroline let her miss you. She wanted to see you. Caroline let her see you. She asked questions about the letters. You made those questions about loyalty again. You think Caroline is some saint? No. She abandoned that child for months. She was in a hospital. She still disappointed her. Yes. Mom stopped. She had expected me to deny it. I did not. Caroline hurt Lucy sometimes, I said. You did too. The difference is she is not asking Lucy to prove love by taking sides. That is not fair. Maybe not, but it's what happened. I ended the call before we could repeat ourselves. The incident did not decide anything by itself. Lucy's words were not treated as some magic legal trigger. The February review already had the older record, my updated declaration, Dad's statement, the letters and postmarks, the Christmas text, and the filed material showing how Mom had reported Lucy's emotional reactions. What happened during that visit mattered, because it fit a pattern that had already been documented. That was the part Mom never understood. She thought every consequence came from one dramatic accusation. It did not. It came from repetition. Given another chance to be only Grandma, she reached for control again. And this time Lucy was old enough to recognize the difference. The February review did not look anything like the courtroom scenes people imagine when they hear the word custody. There was no dramatic confession, no judge slamming a gavel, no single piece of paper that suddenly proved everything. By then, the guardianship had already ended. Lucy was living with Caroline. The question was narrower. What kind of contact with Mom and Dad was actually helping Lucy adjust, and what kind was pulling her back into the same loyalty conflict everyone claimed they wanted to protect her from? My updated declaration was part of the record. Dad's statement was there too, along with the Christmas texts, the letters, the postmarks, and the earlier material showing how much of the reporting about Lucy's emotional reactions had come through Mom. The January visit mattered because it did not stand alone. It showed that, given another chance, Mom had repeated the same pattern. The practical result was not that Mom vanished from Lucy's life. Nobody decided she was forbidden from ever seeing her granddaughter again. The transitional visits became more structured for a while, with supervision and clearer boundaries around what could and could not be discussed with Lucy. The adults were expected to keep court disputes, placement questions, and accusations out of the visits. Mom no longer controlled phone calls, letters, schedules, or what information Lucy received from Caroline. She could still be Grandma. What she could not be was the person who decided which relationships Lucy was allowed to trust. Mom called that consequence cruel. I thought it was precise. For almost 2 years, she had treated access to Lucy like proof of moral authority. She had been the one school staff called, the one relatives thanked, the one people at church praised for stepping up after Evan died and Caroline was injured. She had never hidden how much that praise mattered to her. After the review, she stopped volunteering with the small family support group at her church. I never asked whether she left on her own or whether someone suggested it. I knew only that she was no longer introduced as the grandmother who had raised a grieving child through crisis. And for once, I let a missing detail stay missing. I had learned what happened when people filled blanks with whatever version made them feel righteous. Dad paid differently. His declaration damaged his marriage with Mom more than he had expected. For weeks, she accused him of humiliating her, siding with Caroline, and choosing outsiders over his wife. He came to my apartment one Sunday afternoon, looking exhausted, and told me, "I finally did the right thing, and somehow I'm still the bad guy." I stared at him across my kitchen table. "You did one right thing after a lot of waiting." He looked wounded. "I know that sounds harsh. It is harsh. It's also true." He sat back. For once, he did not tell me Mom was under pressure. He did not ask me to understand how hard marriage had been. He did not say he was only trying to keep peace. After a while, he nodded. "I should have given Lucy that letter. Yes, I should have said something sooner. Yes, and I should have stopped Elaine on Christmas Eve." I looked at him. Yes. He rubbed his hands together. I did not forgive him in some dramatic moment. I did not cut him off either. Dad's relationship with Lucy became something he had to rebuild through consistency, instead of assuming that being Grandpa erased everything he had failed to do. That felt more appropriate than either total absolution or total destruction. Caroline surprised me most in the months after Lucy came home. I expected the hard part to be logistics. School pickup, therapy appointments, work schedules, a child adjusting to a different bedroom after almost 2 years. Those things were difficult, but the harder part was emotional. Lucy missed Mom. Sometimes she missed her badly. She wanted Mom's pancakes. She wanted the blanket from her old room. She got angry at Caroline over birthdays. She remembered waiting for a call that came late, or visits that had ended early. Caroline never told her those feelings were disloyal. One evening, she called me after Lucy had spent almost an hour crying because she wanted to talk to Grandma. "I let her call," Caroline said. "Good." She told Mom she missed her. "That's okay. I know." The old Caroline would have said the last word defensively. This time she sounded tired, not angry. She asked me if I was mad. "What did you say?" I told her no. "And were you?" Caroline laughed softly. "Of course I was. That mattered too." Being better than Mom did not mean Caroline had no ugly feelings. It meant she did not hand them to Lucy and demand they be managed. Lucy did not speak to me for almost 3 weeks after the December handoff. She did not tell Caroline she hated me. She simply did not want to talk. I let that stand. Then, one Saturday morning, Caroline texted me. "She wants you to come over." I read the message 3 times before replying. "When?" "Now, if you can." Carolyn lived about 35 minutes away. I did not rehearse an apology in the car because I knew if I did, I would turn it into another problem to solve correctly. Instead, I drove. Lucy opened the door. She was wearing mismatched socks and an oversized sweatshirt. For a second, we just looked at each other. Then she said, "Mom said you wanted to talk to me." I do if you want to. She stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table while Caroline deliberately found something to do in another room. Lucy picked at the edge of a sticker on her water bottle. Did you want me to live with Grandma forever? No. Then why did you write that paper? I took a breath. Because your mom was badly hurt then. She couldn't take care of you yet. And I thought Grandma and Grandpa were the safest place for you while she got better. Lucy frowned. But she got better. Yes. You knew? Some of it. Then why didn't you change the paper? That was the question. Not whether Mom lied to me. Not whether lawyers used old documents. Not whether the situation was complicated. Why did I not update what I had said? I should have checked sooner when things changed, I told her. I didn't. That was my mistake. Lucy watched me carefully. Were you on Grandma's side? I thought I was on the side of keeping you safe. That's not what I asked. I almost smiled because she sounded like me. No, I'm not on sides now. She considered that. Then she stood. I thought the conversation was over. Instead, she walked into the hallway and came back carrying a piece of poster board covered in drawings and handwritten labels. We're doing California missions at school. I looked at it. Which one did you get? San Juan Bautista. She sat beside me and started explaining the project. There was no forgiveness speech. No hug. No clean declaration that everything was okay. She just let me back into an ordinary part of her life. That was enough. Mom and I took longer. By spring, we could speak without shouting, but only because I stopped allowing every conversation to become a trial about whether she had been a good grandmother. I knew she had loved Lucy. I knew she had sacrificed for her. I also knew none of those things erased what she had done. The last serious argument happened outside my parents' house after one of Dad's scheduled visits with Lucy. Mom stood on the walkway, watching Caroline's car disappear. Then she turned to me. You took my granddaughter away from me. I was tired of that sentence. No. Her eyes hardened. You testified against us. I corrected my own statement. You helped Caroline take her. The court ended the guardianship because Caroline recovered. You know what I mean. I do. She folded her arms. Then say it. I looked at her. You were asked to give her mother back her place. You decided that meant losing yours. Mom flinched. I raised that child for a period when her mother couldn't. And now I'm punished for loving her too much? No, you're dealing with consequences because you tried to decide who she was allowed to love. That's ridiculous. She found 7 letters you kept from her. I protected her. You still believe that? Yes, I do. There was no point pretending otherwise. Mom's face changed. You turned her against me. I had heard that accusation enough times that it no longer made me defensive. No one had to turn Lucy against you. Mom stared at me. She got old enough to understand what you were asking her to do. I never asked her to choose. You asked her to prove love through loyalty. That feels like choosing when you're 9. Mom opened her mouth. I did not stay for the next argument. I walked to my car. That was another thing I had learned. A boundary was not the perfect final sentence. Sometimes it was leaving before the old conversation started again. A few months later, in early summer, I stopped by Caroline's apartment after work. Lucy was 10 by then. She had grown just enough that the cuffs of a sweater I remembered covering her hands at Christmas now stopped above her wrists. She was in her room looking for a library book. I stood in the doorway while she complained that she could never find anything because Caroline had moved everything, even though they had been living there for months. Then I saw the backpack, the same one she had held against her chest on Christmas Eve. It lay open on the floor. Inside were 2 library books, a box of markers, a sweater, and an empty granola bar wrapper. Nothing hidden. No unopened letters. No documents. No evidence an adult might need later. Just the messy contents of a 10-year-old's bag. I stood there looking at it long enough that Lucy noticed. What? Nothing. You're being weird. I know. She rolled her eyes and went back to looking for her book. Months earlier, that backpack had been the safest place she could think of to hide a truth the adults around her had made dangerous. Now she had left it open. That was the ending I remembered more than any court decision or argument with my mother. The first decision we made after the accident had been right. Caroline could not care for Lucy then. And my parents stepped in when she needed them. The failure came later, when Mom decided that because something had once been necessary, she was entitled to make it permanent. I had made my own version of that mistake. I had been so certain my first judgment was sound that I stopped asking whether the facts had changed. They had. By the time I understood that, the best thing I could do was not pretend I had always known better. It was correct my part of the story, accept the consequences, and stop helping anyone else control the truth. Because love can justify showing up. It can justify sacrifice. It can justify staying through a crisis. What it cannot justify is deciding that someone belongs to you because you were there when they needed you most. Protecting a child never means controlling who they are allowed to love. When circumstances change, you must reassess old decisions, admit mistakes, and correct the record instead of defending your pride. Put a child's safety above family loyalty, respect healthy boundaries, and subscribe for more stories with consequences that matter.